I'm thrilled to meet with Erik Unger for a dive to the deep end of awakening. Erik sees himself as a very left-brained, logical software developer who learned to integrate the right-brained intuitive and feeling side later in life. Triggered by a general unhappiness, he went on a journey to end his suffering and finding inner balance. Yeah, welcome, Erik. It's great to have you.
Yeah, nice to be here.
Yeah, so today we want to speak about the deep end of awakening. And when I talk to people, I often hear that they have quite a few expectations about what awakening will look like, how it will turn out for them. And so I'm curious to hear, did you have expectations about awakening? And was awakening the way you expected it to be?
Yeah, so I think I had no expectations. I'm not coming from any spiritual tradition, and so I wasn't expecting that way of enlightenment or anything else. I was just suffering. So it was for me 2020, COVID, lockdowns, and myself in like depression and unhappy about everything. And so I started with like fasting and yoga and meditation. And then for me, the meditation thing was what really took off. And I didn't expect anything like, oh, now I'm getting enlightenment or this or that. I just wanted to get out of my suffering. And back at that time, found that course, 45 Days to Awakening, with some good instructions on how to meditate and but basically just sitting still for an hour did the thing for me. And yeah, and then my mind started to unravel and the usual things that happen.
Mhm. Yeah, so many people also report that they have like a honeymoon phase. Was that for you as well? Like you just alluded to it, then the mind took over afterwards and tried to make some story out of it, or how was that for you?
Oh well, many stages and many honeymoon periods and dark nights of the soul and stuff like that. But yeah, so in the beginning, there was really this nice feeling. So I don't know where I should start. I mean, we could talk for 2 hours, just the whole story, but um, yeah, but there were those periods where it's just nice and blissful, and I was kind of hearing the music of the spheres in my with my inner ear, and it was just all um, like paradise. And then yeah, something snapped, and then some dark night of the soul or past trauma and that kind of thing started to show up. And yeah, I had to work through that uh, dark period, and yeah, got back again to some nice inner place. And yeah, should we go into something specific?
Yes,
Because
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
5 years of stories by now. So
yeah. So let's see. Maybe we could start with something like I'm pretty sure you already mentioned it a little bit. It's ups and downs. And so can you share something that was most surprising to you in this process?
well, of course, there were things that did really surprise me. So on one side, those trauma things that were coming up, and past life traumas for me mostly. And so, of course, that was really surprising. Oh my God, what happened? Was this me or not me? What is this? Or is it just archetype stuff that's happening? Um, that was really surprising. So, because you really have no idea what will come up. And then the other surprising thing for me, more on the nice side of things, was that I heard stories about really great states of mind and like astral traveling and having this experience and that experience. And I always thought, oh wow, that's just from some masters who are completely out there and that's so far removed from everything I'm doing. And I started to have many experiences, but I always thought my experience, oh, that was just like a little dreamlike or very subtle, and um, but it kind of sounds exactly what that famous guy has been talking about. But it surely is not that because they are talking about that, and when you hear those stories from other guys, then you think, oh my God, that's just so extreme and out there. But my experience is just this small little thing which seems to sound similar. And what I noticed and what was surprising to me is that it looks like my experience has also been that. So it's you make up in your mind a lot of yeah, you project out some stuff on other people who are telling big stories, and now I'm the one who is telling some wild stories about metaphysical stuff on podcasts, and people will be doing the same. They will be thinking, oh, Eric has those like wild out of body experiences and meeting those angels and aliens and whatever. And it sounds so wild. But yeah, I guess for some it's more like in your face, and for others it's more subtle. Um, but I think many have this like core of an experience that matches those other experiences, and and it can be in effect the same experience. It doesn't have to be, or you have those expectations. That's the thing I want to get to is you have all those expectations. You hear all those stories about the great metaphysical or the great enlightenment and all this kind of stuff. And you think it's some kind of thing and experience. And then when you experience it, then it might be really wild and everything, but it might also be very subtle. And the very subtle thing could be the very deepest thing.
Hmm. Yeah, good point. And I remember when we first met, we exchanged a little bit about like our clairvoyant experiences. And what was very interesting to me is that for you, these senses and all the experiences opened up during the awakening process, where for me it has been with me since childhood. So I found this interesting that in the awakening process, also this can happen, you know. You feel like you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I would say my path is like the classic path, how it's described in the Eastern style of awakening. So you meditate, and you have experiences, and then your siddhis start to open up. But what I've also seen with others is that that's not the case most of the time. So, I mean, if you are sensitive, usually you have that your whole life, and I probably also had it since childhood. It was just that my left brainy thinking mind just blocked out everything all my life, and then when the mind finally got quiet, then those things came up. Um, but yeah, again, I mean, mine was kind of like the classic path, how it's described, but also the learning is for most people, I got to know it was not like that. So um, people just have a certain predisposition to certain experiences, and they might have all the woo-woo and all the fireworks, and others might have just this quiet sinking deeper of just letting go slowly of attachments, and that's it. And I think there is no right way of how this develops.
Mm-hmm.
So all those systems and those attainments with There are certain levels of enlightenment and all that kind of stuff. It all seems to be just made up by humans who made up a story about something. Um, and of course, you can group experiences into different things or classes, and you can have like a more shallow version of that and a more deeper version of that. But I don't think that there is one universal map of enlightenment that's like nailed on the door of the universe. Like those are, this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I'm on that page as well. Like there's awakening is not like a one fits all. And coming back to the cities for a second, is that often in the text, I think also in the Buddhist text, there's a warning about the cities. So what do you think about that? What's your take on that?
So for one, there is this thing where you shouldn't dabble in them because they are much too powerful. And if you haven't refined your mind and everything, then you might be like an atomic bomb that's in the hand of a terrorist or something. Uh, I think that's not true. Um, Most of the time it's very difficult to get there, except if you have the predisposition anyways, then that happens anyways. Um, but yeah, there's this thing so like in yeah, some traditions they are not allowed to teach you like the dangerous stuff and the dangerous magic and all that kind of thing. But I think that's mostly making it more valuable in the minds of people by making it secret and very special and unattainable. And in general, that's like the carrot in front of you. If you get to that level, then you get those cities and magic powers, or they will be transferred to you. And there is something to this whole transmission thing of certain things, but I wouldn't also, yeah, oversubscribe to that.
Mhm. Yeah. So it's like, okay, awakening is very individual. It can show up different ways, and there can be like an opening up or an uncovering of like clairvoyant senses as well and cities, and they can be part of the path, but they don't have to. And so, yeah. And since it's not only like the nice stuff happening, you already mentioned a dark night of the soul. It can get quite bumpy and messy also. And so I was wondering, could you share and would you share one thing that or several that were quite challenging on the way?
Yeah, so for me, as I said before, those past life traumas, um, when I had my really big first experience afterwards, I had kind of PTSD. So I didn't even dare to meditate for 3 to 4 months because what happened was so strong and I was just so shocked of what I experienced there. And at the same time, I was or I started dreaming every night about other lives. And those other lives were all completely fucked up, and I was dying in horrible ways. And I was waking up and happy that my limbs are still there, that I just lost in my dream of this other life. But yeah, also very confusing and very hard to get through. And so that took me half a year to get back to a good place. And yeah, so that was one of those things where you kind of overshoot the runway with an experience and then have to battle back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting also for people to hear because you often hear like first big opening or shift is can be quite blissful and ecstatic and all that. And you just mentioned like it basically tore your life down for a couple of months. So if people experience a more shocking awakening or opening, is there something you would like them to know, something you want to share about that?
Yeah, so the thing is, no state is final. So we are a dynamic system and we are just adapting to the environment. And basically, this adaptation always happens. And so there's no final state. So even if you think you've arrived at some enlightenment and it just you feel completely enlightened, that's probably not the final state. But also, if you're like down in the gutter and having like those wild nightmare dreams every night, also that's not final. Or if you completely lose yourself and you don't exist and the world doesn't exist, it sounds like you have reached the end of the path because everything that could dissolve seems dissolved. And there are some traditions where this is like the top goal to dissolve everything. So when everything is gone, you think you might be at the end of the path and that's it. And if you and that might feel not that great for many people who experience that, from what I've heard. For some, it's nice because if you really suffered and then everything is gone, that's kind of nice. But yeah, it can feel really nihilistic and now everything is gone and I had a life before, now nothing exists even anymore. I don't exist, the world exists, doesn't exist, and so everything is gone. And that sounds very final, but of course it also is not final. And if you know that it is not final, then you can also move through that faster if you want to. But there are some people who think like that's the end, and then they get stuck there because what could be else there except of everything is gone now.
Mhm.
But of course, there's not everything gone now because there's some suffering self that's like witnessing that everything is gone, and so that's just halfway the path, you could say.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good point. That there is still a subtle observer or witness, and so it's a often very, very subtle form of duality. And yeah, there's still more to come. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can definitely relate to I had a nihilistic phase as well, and it did not feel great. Yeah. Okay. So we looked at what was surprising, what was challenging, and then what would you say, what is the main difference between like before First Awakening and now, or a couple of, if there are more, what's the difference?
I mean, the difference now is everything because I can't even remember how it was before. So how it is now is that I can't tell the difference between what was this morning, yesterday, last year, in my childhood on a felt sense. It all feels just like gone and a faint memory, like a dream. And I really can't even imagine how it is to be depressed. Um, and those states I had before that got me to start on a path at all. So that's, yeah, I can't get into that, like imagining, I mean, mentally, yes, but not emotionally, how it would be to be like depressed or like have these anxious thought loops all the time and stuff like that. And so yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
that's the difference. And so I can't even say how it was before, really. I mean, yeah, uh, I have some mental notes about that, but I can't feel it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's so interesting, and I can relate, like it's like a fading dream. And yeah. And so okay, you started with no expectations about awakening, and then there was a process going on. And if you were asked today, what is awakening? What would you say?
I would say it's a process where you let go of certain thought and emotional loops that are going on in your brain or mind or body, whatever, that are not really necessary for living in your environment. So we are all basically programmed very defensively. We are always looking out for dangers, and our logically thinking mind is also used for that. So we are always thinking of what could go wrong here, what could go wrong here, or that might be also on, like on a deeper level, on an emotional level, where we feel something might be wrong, and then the higher thinking mind comes in and has these thought loops where we think of how could we solve that problem that isn't really here. Um, and that all makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint, that we are defensive and anxious and so on, and always looking out to protect ourselves and our loved ones and everyone. But let's say in the modern world where we live now, it's mostly not necessary that we are that revved up to always yeah, see the saber-toothed tiger behind every bush. And so what awakening is basically letting go of those unnecessary thoughts and emotions and finding an equilibrium where we spend less energy on all those thoughts and emotions, but are still able to work in our environment. And depending on in what environment we are, we can like dial down the level of that emotional and mental activity. So for instance, if you're a monk in a monastery and there's no social stress because that could be like intrigues and stuff like that. But if it's like nice and peaceful, you can of course calm down more than if you are a mom with children who just has to like have get everyday life working, or someone who is like in a war zone and has to look out for survival. So it's there's no one like final level that you reach. I mean, what would be the lowest level? The lowest level of like calming down everything, you would be a vegetable. I mean, you would be just sitting there, and some are doing that in meditation, and some are going into caves and do that for years. And you just yeah, draw down all your internal mechanisms, and you don't need much for survival. But depending on your environment, you need more or less of that. But you can learn to do it in a smarter way. So that's the whole thing with the attachments. So there might be challenges, and you react to those challenges, but then you are not attached to whatever thing might happen that then is not happening. So I think it's an adaptation process that we all have in us, but that most people don't know that you can do that because it always seems like you have to be up and revving all the time. And that is like a completely non-spiritual, like non-metaphysical explanation, has like nothing to do with enlightenment. um, but the thing is, if certain processes calm down, then other things might come up, like those siddhis or the sixth sense and stuff like that. And you might have experiences where your mind connects like with the greater of everything, and so on. And and that's the metaphysical dimension, and that comes into play. And of course, in religions, spiritual traditions, that's all kind of mixed up and given different levels and enlightenments and whatever, but that's all just a pure construct.
Mhm. I can imagine some will find this very unappealing, stripped of all like the fireworks, all the spiritual gloss and overlays. But I
No,
like.
I don't say that that's, yeah, you could say that's part of that. But there is this one part, this like just letting go of all the unnecessary stuff. And I think that's exactly what the Buddha taught us. And the other things, like with the metaphysical and your mind connecting with the universe and so on, yeah, there are other traditions who are deeper into that. But then, of course, the Buddhists reconnected like everything. And if you look at like Tibetan Buddhism, they have like everything that you can imagine, like in the psychological, in the metaphysical, everything mixed together, which is, of course, much more than just how do you get rid of suffering by just getting rid of your unnecessary internal stuff.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I love it how you boil it down to like the ground level. And is there something we haven't touched on? Would you feel like could or should be explored in this context of like the deep end of awakening?
So yeah, maybe coming back to how I divided up like this basic calming process where you just let go of stuff and all the other, the fireworks and everything. I think, and I've said that before, it's often all mixed together. And one important perspective is that you can separate it out and be just aware of it. So there is this, I put like the spiritual awakening into three dimensions. Um, so one dimension would be the social one, because of course, we are talking here, exchanging ideas and concepts. And if I would be just living in the woods by myself and not together with other people, then I probably don't have all the concepts and everything, and wouldn't even know what awakening is and enlightenment and all this kind of stuff. I would just be living. And so there's this social process where we come up with concepts, and then part of the awakening is then letting go of concepts again. But whatever, we are interacting and growing together. And this growing together is one dimension of this awakening or spiritual process. Then another dimension is the psychological one, which is this letting go, which is like the original Buddhism mostly. And then for me, the third dimension is the metaphysical. That's like, yeah, all this, like what's going on really with spirits, with consciousness, with here there's all this woo-woo thing stuff that happens. And I think it's good to be aware that those are all different things and that you don't have to put them all together. And usually with religions or spiritual systems, you have everything put together and packaged, and you then reach that level and that level and that level. But in reality, um, you might be just going on in the psychological dimension and letting go of everything, and you don't have to be like a preacher like in the social dimension and tell everybody and or become a teacher or stuff like that. And you might not need to have all the woo-woo experiences, or you just are completely different and you are like a shaman and you're just working for community all the time. You're completely immersed in the social dimension and you do energy healings and work with the spirits and so on. And the psychological dimension isn't that important for you because it's all for you, like how do I use the metaphysical to help socially and stuff like that. And yeah, so I'm a systems thinker, and so I of course make up my own systems how you could order that. And there is no final system for all of that. But yeah, as I said, we are social creatures. We exchange ideas, and so this is an idea, and it helps one to think and to also put own experience into context. Because I think that's the important thing that we do here also with this podcast and so on, just putting things into context. How is it for you? How is it for you? And so we are not so confused when something wild happens.
Yeah, perfect. I found myself how important context is because, like you mentioned, if the social access is not there, for example, I wasn't aware that this is about awakening for several years because I did not have any context. And I found it extremely helpful, really, in like relaxing into the process and kind of like also making peace with it in a way. And so, and I also love, like you shared, that you can have several of the axes you mentioned, but you don't have to have them. So people don't fall into like the trap of trying to fit in a specific map or tradition or whatever and try to tweak their own process to fit in there, which will not work because it's so highly individual. So yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. As said before, we are all just dynamic systems who are adapting to the environment, and we come with different predispositions, and there is no central map at the uh, center of the universe how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, perfect. So that sounds to me like a great closing phrase. So it was wonderful to have you. And yeah, I'd love to explore a few more topics that came up right and left while we talked. So, but for now, thank you so much for being on this show. And yeah,
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. As always, I love talking to you.